Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey, Connected Life peeps. You haven't heard that in a while, have you? You wanted to hear that, though. Look, we're about to talk about a paradigm shift in relationships. This is part 2 with 2-part episode.
Two.
We're here with Pietze and Johnny Duffield.
Pietze and
Aloha. Johnny and Pietze. We're here with the Duffields. We're great friends of ours. In the last episode, we had a whole conversation based around changing the entire paradigm of how you approach relationships.
Yeah, we're talking about rules for relationships that make your relationship thrive instead of survive. And
Dwindle and die.
one of the things I was going to say is me and Justin and Pietze and Johnny have all had to learn a completely new way to map out relationships. And I think most people have not seen how to do relationships with guidelines of like, here are actually specific tools on how to do relationships so that both people thrive. Most of us have seen a lot of relationships, but it doesn't necessarily mean we've seen how to do them well, how to repair well, how to interact well. Most of us grew up, like I grew up with parents who got lost in the battle over needs. Both of them, they spent 40 years going back and forth. No, my needs will get met. No, my needs will get met. I've seen even about financially, the way that they ran their finances is my mom was super generous and my dad wanted to save a lot. And so their whole marriage, instead of ever finding the pathway with finances, they just got angry and tried to battle for their own vision to work. And so we're talking about a completely different paradigm for looking at your relationship as secure functioning. I highly recommend listening to the first episode to catch
if you haven't yet, got to catch up on that.
Yes, because everything we're talking on is building on that episode. You'll be a little lost. But if you want to just start with maybe the plant analogy really quick, and then we'll explain, and secure functioning, we're going to get into honesty, making and keeping agreements, and go from there.
Yeah. Well, I'll give my definition and then you can do the plant analogy.
Yeah, sounds good.
This definition is always changing for me and always growing. And a lot of what we have learned about secure functioning comes from the works of the great Stan Tetkin. But the way that I would define secure functioning is it's like a social contract between you and your main person of how you're going to treat each other so that you can set up a relationship where you can be happy and fulfilled in life and they can too. It's all based in our humanity. I am going to be imperfect. I'm going to do the things that bother you for the rest of my life. And you're going to do the things that bother me for the rest of my life. And together, can we set things up in a way that's good enough for both of us? Can we
live with each other?
Can we get to 70% of things are good between us, that I'm getting enough of my needs met and enough of my boundaries are able to be in place, and same for you. And we don't enforce it through a court of law. You're wrong for doing this.
Bad.
You're not doing secure functioning.
Yes.
If there's anything I don't want you to do after this episode is to go and tell your spouse that they're not doing it right. It's enforced through a desire for fairness and an equitable relationship, something where I equally value what you need and your nervous system and your emotions, and I equally value mine. I'm not self-abandoning and I'm not you abandoning. It's both of us. We enforce it through things like humility. When somebody brings something to you, right away being humble. Through honesty, when something's bothering you, honesty is a commitment to yourself. It's a commitment to them. It's not through, oh, you're wrong. You really have, to get to secure functioning, you really do have to get out of the mentality of right versus wrong. because it's not about that. It's not about that at all.
It's not about, is Justin's need right or wrong? Is his anxiety right or wrong?
Is it right or wrong for him to need alone time? Is
Yeah.
it right or wrong for him to have a hard time with conversation?
Yeah.
Is it right or wrong for Abby to be upset at him for this thing that he did?
Right.
No, it's not right or wrong. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. It's about creating something that you did not have in childhood,
Mm-hmm.
which is fairness and a voice and autonomy and connection and love that are not dependent on what you do, but the fact that you are a human and that your main person needs to value that, and you need to value that in them as well.
And a lot of, to even go on this journey, again, we'll get into the practicals of it, but there has to be a mindset of accepting what it is to be human.
Yes.
In order to have, the only way to have healthy relationships is to have a realistic expectation of what it means to be human, which
Yes.
means you can't meet my needs 100% of the time. You are going to have things that you do that drive me crazy.
Yeah.
There are going to be things that I do that drive you crazy. It's the concept of, can we accept what it is to be normal as a human being?
And I want to add that you're not my source of life and I'm not your source of life. That doesn't mean that we're not streams passing into each other's lives, bettering it, but you're not where I get my source of my worth, my value.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's necessary at the core of this.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways, and we talked about this in the last episode, but one of the ways that we help people understand this concept is by, most people go into relationship and it's either I'm focused fully on myself and self-protection and getting my needs met because your needs haven't been met or valued in the relationship. So you're constantly fixated on how do I get my needs met here? Or I'm self-abandoning all the time and making it, I'm not getting my needs met because I'm making it all about the other person. And what we tell people to do is, rather than focusing on yourself or focusing on the other person, we actually ask people to focus on a third object, which is the relationship. So it's both people mutually and by agreement focusing on the relationship together and caring for the relationship together. And we describe that as a plant. Like, imagine your relationship as a plant. And if you take care of this plant well, the cool thing is that this plant grows into a tree that produces fruit, produces shade,
Produces
it produces
oxygen.
life. It
Mhm.
actually not only gives back to you, it gives back to your
To
family,
everyone around
to
you.
your friends, to your community when it's
Mhm.
cared for well.
Such
Yeah.
a
You
good
know?
analogy.
And so
And it allows you to activate the thing that we all signed up for when we got married, which is it's the multiplication effect. We are more together than we
Mhm.
would be apart.
Yes.
Most couples don't ever get to that point where the relationship is giving life to them.
Mhm.
Most people feel like the relationship is sucking the life out of them.
Oh no,
That's true.
it's very
you know, and so one of the ways that we describe this to people is, as you're caring for this plant, the only way that this plant can really thrive is through mutuality and partnership, collaboration. And that
Fairness.
collaboration,
Yeah.
fairness, justice.
When you talk about, you've said fairness a couple times. Do you want to explain what you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that it's not me versus you. It's not my needs versus your needs. It's not right or wrong. It's we're both human and we're both allowed to have a say. We're both allowed, and we don't have to understand why the other person has the needs that they do. It's like common humanity. When I say fairness or an equitable relationship, it's like I'm going to act the way towards you that I'm going to expect you to act towards me. And I'm going to hold myself to that. And I'm going to hold you to that.
Can you give a practical example?
That's a great
So
question.
I would say, like, one
I'm
is,
terrible with examples.
yeah, one is that when one of us has a problem or an issue or hurt feelings or a need, that right away it's the other person's job to let that person know that that's valuable and it matters, even if they can't talk about it in that moment or meet that need. That always, when someone is signaling, and when we say signaling, saying, hey, over here, I'm not doing okay, or I got hurt, or I have a need, that's a value. And so if I say to Johnny, like, hey, can we talk about what happened last night with the kids? I didn't love the way that you talk to one of the kids. That's a common thing that
Very
most
common.
people, a common thing in our relationship, a common thing in a lot of marriages. One parent has an issue with how the other parent dealt with a child. That right away, Johnny goes, hey, she's not doing okay with that interaction. I feel great about it, but she's not okay. I value that. And
I value that she's not okay.
I value that she's not okay and that we need to talk through this and we need to come to mutuality and fairness of how we're going to deal with the kids. And he expects the same out of me. So if he comes to me and says, hey, I felt like you were really escalated in the way that you dealt with the kids. I didn't like that I value that as well and go, yep, that matters. You probably are seeing something I'm not seeing. And if you felt uncomfortable with it, that matters to me. And I want to adjust myself to where we both feel good about the interaction.
And when you don't have that, as much as it wouldn't seem this way, it becomes a codependent entanglement, right? Because even for me, you would think codependence is just strictly, I'm not okay if you're not okay, right? Like there's some oversimplified thoughts around codependence. But one of the ways that codependency shows up relationally for us is that I have set up the relationship that it's a one-way street.
Right.
This, in my mind, the simplest way to think about codependency is that relationship is not a two-way street. It's a performance-based one-way street. It's either me making it all about you or you making it all about you.
Yeah.
Rather than it being mutual. And what the problem with that is that it breeds a lot of resentment.
An entanglement. Nobody's actually getting their needs met.
I can do all the things right and I can apologize for everything that you're mad about all the time. But if you're not returning that to me in a fair way where my nervous system can feel, internally, if you know what it feels like when you're upset and the energy comes inside your gut. If there's not a way for you to go to your partner and have them help you resolve that, but you're always helping them resolve it when it comes up for them. Long term, that creates a lot of problems.
The plant will die.
Well, and I'm thinking about you using the word fairness, and I'm like, if it has to be an agreement that both people agree to. There has to be a mutual agreement.
Yeah.
Because if Pietze decides, I want you to always respond that what I'm bringing to the table matters, but you don't decide that, she will constantly resent you and will constantly blame you and point out you're not following the rules. Like there has to actually be some relationship kind of core values that is a mutual decision. So a great one for us was when we were like, we're not going to yell.
Yeah.
Because that is, and we talked about our nervous system and how our relationship, our job is to create a nervous system where we both can thrive.
Yeah.
No one is thriving in yelling.
Yep, totally.
And so that is our core value. Now, does that mean we never yell? I love that you talk about this is for imperfect people. We do yell sometimes. We try really hard.
Humanity gets in the way.
Humanity gets in the way.
Automatic responses.
But what that means is when either of us yell, we come back to the table and we say, hey, I did the thing that we don't want to do. And I'm really sorry.
I've violated the standard that we've agreed to.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. That's not the standard that I want to live by. And so there's that self-accountability that happens inside of it. But there's the room for the humanity. Like the humanity will happen, but will we take ownership and accountability for the role that we play?
Absolutely.
Well, and it is really important that it's imperfect. Like I want to use an example that you used last time. You talked about the house and the cleanliness of the house. That's an issue for you guys. So if you think about your natural tendency to not keep the house clean, Abby, and Justin's need for that.
Yes. It doesn't feel realistic that I will always be able to keep it clean.
If he's on you all the time about it.
Yep.
And the second you leave one magazine out of place, he's like, hey, what's this doing here?
Yeah.
Okay. And we all know how this is.
Totally.
Pietze can be really on me about things. I can be really on her about things. What happens is you start resenting this agreement.
Yeah.
You resent the secure functioning because it's, and when you start resenting it, the word secure is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not secure.
Now it's a law that you're held captive by.
It's a very good point,
which
John.
nobody wants to be in a relationship like that.
No.
But if every time you do a good job, he celebrates you, it actually creates a desire in you to do better for him. Right. And so being allowed to be imperfect, I tell couples, we do a lot of couples counseling. And when in the conversation of secure functioning, I'm always very clear. the more you are okay with them breaking the agreement and that there's grace, but you can have conversation about it. Like, hey, do you see that this was a problem for me?
Totally.
The more that there's grace there, the more it breeds in them a desire to do better. But there has to be an honest conversation about it. This is where it's really important to quickly clean things up.
Yeah.
And that's what part of secure functioning is, not just the making and keeping of agreements, but the humility that when you don't do that, that right away you say, hey, I know that we said we weren't going to yell.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I yelled there and I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's met with, yeah, you're a loser, I can't believe you did that. If you do that one more time, I'm gone,
out.
blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. Then it doesn't work.
And
there
this
has to be
goes-
grace involved in the picture for humanity because we're all imperfect.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you can't say how it affected you.
Mhm.
Hey, I appreciate
doesn't
you
mean you
coming
can't be
back.
upset.
It really hurt me when you did that. It really made me feel scared. It really brought, do you see how this, yeah, I see that. I'm glad that we have this in place. Yeah, let's get back to that together.
And
You
if you've
know?
had grace, say over the last year, Justin has yelled 5 times.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's way better than it used to be.
Totally.
But I have no
Sure.
idea.
Yeah.
But theoretically speaking,
Yeah.
if 4 of those times it was met with grace,
Yeah.
and one of those times you're like, I have had it with this
Totally.
shit. Like, are you kidding me? I
Yeah.
can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you haven't been making it high stakes buys you grace
Yep.
to occasionally make it high stakes.
Absolutely.
Where
It's
you
this
can't
ping
handle
pong
it in your
ball
body.
Totally.
where you're
know?
creating enough space for their humanity
Mm-hmm.
that when there isn't space for their humanity,
Mhm.
that's okay.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's kind of like creating a bank account.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we have withdrawals in moments where something deeply affects us. We might make a withdrawal. So like the more he doesn't yell, when he does yell,
There's grace for that.
there's a little bit more grace for it. And then the more that I respond well when he apologizes,
Mhm.
there's more in my bank account if I have a bad response.
And the
but-
safer it becomes for him to apologize.
But this is what the difference is a lot of people do rule keeping in relationship.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And rule keeping is
destructive.
very lawyering. It's very, you're
Well,
not
oh,
doing this and this right.
yeah.
And that's why I'm not doing these things.
It requires
You're
both people to
not-
be perfect, and
Right.
that's
It's
not
a
realistic.
performance-based relationship,
Yeah,
and
there's-
which makes it not really a relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not the acceptance of like with standards. And when we made the standard of not yelling, we knew it was unrealistic
Yeah.
that we would be able to follow.
Yeah.
Now we were like, we will eventually, because
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
transforming.
The
Our
hope is to
nervous
get there.
systems have
Yeah.
transformed. We yell way less than we ever have.
Way less.
But we never thought it was possible to instantly be perfect. And this is where a lot of people, so they might be like, we want to start doing this thing where we have quality time every week, once a week. And then if somebody misses it, it becomes so high stakes.
Mhm.
And now it becomes punishment. And now it's this huge thing. If you have the perspective, we want to try to do it every week. And we know that there'll be weeks where life happens that it messes
Yep,
that up.
it's not gonna.
Like the acceptance of the imperfection of life helps us adapt more instead of react.
Yeah,
I
and
wanna-
there's a safety net in it because you get to be human, and so do I. And it's not permission to do whatever, but it's the ability to understand that humanity is present and we accept that reality.
What this keeps is it stops us from living in constant deficit. So the grace and the celebration, like Johnny was talking about earlier, like, oh, celebrate the fact that they did do that.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up going, okay, I'm being celebrated. I feel like I'm actually putting something into a bank
Yeah.
account rather than I'm living in constant deficit with this person. The minute that we set this standard, I'm bankrupt.
Yep.
Yeah,
Totally.
And that's why there's usually one partner. A lot of times, typically it's men who don't want to do something like this, typically because in the past they felt
It's
like
just
they
been
had,
punished.
and they feel like there's a bar that they can never reach. Like
Correct.
nothing is ever good enough for you.
Mhm.
I try
Correct.
and I try and I
just
try,
did it
and
in
it
these
doesn't
many
matter.
ways, and I barely heard anything about it.
you'll
Like
hear-
I was successful in these many ways. Felt like that went out the window, and now
Yeah.
I'm being harped at for this
Yeah.
one time or whatever.
Totally, because it's not a mutual agreement; it's a law or standard,
Mhm.
and it doesn't leave, or I shouldn't say standard. It's a law. It doesn't leave room for humanity. It doesn't leave room for both of us to be
Right.
human.
And oftentimes, in our pain, in our fear, in our histories, we are looking for a way to control.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we get information like this and we go, great, a standard at which I can hold you accountable
Yes.
to. And now I will control you.
The power. I've earned the power.
Now I can punish you every time you hurt me.
No, we agreed on the standard. See?
And what we talked about in the first episode was thinking through, and this has changed the entire way I process what I'm going to say to Justin. This one shift, which is, what is the result that I want? Do I want you to hear this? Then I actually need to say it without blame.
Yeah.
Do I want you to be able to receive this? Then I actually need to say it without yelling. Do I want you to want to meet my needs? Like, I remember realizing I want compassion. If I stab you with my words, is that realistic to make you want to hug me? That's not realistic. And so I've started to be like, what is the result that I want? And this is what you guys are talking about. The result we want is a healthy functioning relationship. Yes. We want a healthy functioning nervous system for our relationship. And so I'm thinking, if I'm sowing in punishment to the relationship, that's going to negatively impact the results I reap. It's the principle of sowing and reaping in relationships.
Yes. Absolutely.
If I sow in disappointment without validation, then I'm going to reap the withdrawal or the frustration or the resentment on their side. And so a lot of us get so focused on what the other person is putting in the relationship bucket that we're no longer even thinking about, am I setting myself up to get the result I want?
Absolutely.
Yes.
If I want Justin to be able to listen to me, I need to ask him if now is a good time.
Yeah.
That sets me up to get the result I want.
I used to, in our exchanges, so you use the cleaning example, right?
Yeah.
Which is, we actually are really balanced now, I think, in that, and don't have any big emotions about it. But in the cleaning example, you would like maybe put one dish away and you'd be wanting a celebration. And in my head, I'm like, you're an effing adult. Like, you don't deserve a celebration for being a grown adult who put your dish in the dishwasher.
All the wives are groveling right now because they've said that a million times to their husband, and they're like, a man who is saying, be a freaking adult and just do it.
1,000%. But I wasn't getting myself anywhere with the internal resentment of like, you don't deserve a celebration over doing something that you should do. I had to actually go, okay, if I want this to be something that she perpetually does, I have to engage a heart of gratitude.
Yes.
And it's going to have to go against my rule system in my head of what this should look like.
Well, that's what they're saying. Let go of good or bad.
Yes.
And accept this is her human imperfection.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's not right or wrong.
Yep.
How clean she keeps things. It's how do I protect our relationship?
Yep.
And to protect our relationship, I do need some clean standards, but I also need to treat her like a human.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't like you weren't being treated like a human. I was just like, you should be an adult.
Yeah.
But ultimately, again, what I got to is like, oh no, I'm going to keep. So I started celebrating inside of the relationship. Like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for taking care of that when I saw
and
stuff.
now I don't even recognize her.
Yeah.
She's so clean. I don't know who she is.
When we stay with Justin and Abby, it's like a tornado hits their perfect house.
Yeah, we're like,
you guys
sorry.
are the tornado.
Only we're the sorry.
Yeah.
8 years ago, my life completely shattered. I went through about 25 traumatic situations that happened right after each other. And the pain from that, along with the pain from my childhood that wasn't healed, overwhelmed and engulfed me. It actually broke me. It broke my mind. It broke my heart. And then that broke my body. I became so sick for a few years. And I had to go on the journey of learning how to heal. I went on the process of having to learn how to reclaim myself. It was like I was broken in 1,000 pieces on the ground, and I had to go back and find out how to scoop up each piece and bring them back to me. The only way that I learned how to heal was learning about the nervous system, our emotions, and our body and how they connect to each other. I didn't understand what our mind and our body and nervous system does in pain and in stress, and how we actually hold and carry memories inside of our body. If we don't learn how to retrain our nervous system, we will recreate the patterns that we've lived in, the patterns of stress and chaos. They will just keep happening. If we don't learn how to move the emotions out of our body, they'll stay trapped inside of our body, causing us panic and fear and shutdown. And then, of course, learning our emotions. I spent years trying to manage my emotions, but without understanding how our body works, you can never have a healthy relationship with your emotions. So we created a course this year that I am so excited about. It's 8 years worth of my own personal healing process, plus all of the trauma, research, and understanding that I've had, and all of the healing that I've been able to walk others throughout this process. It's called Reclaiming You, and it will help you create a healthy relationship with your body, your nervous system, and emotions. It's going to help you find your resilience again so that you can face life with hope and joy and actually feel relaxed and feel good in your body and feel safe in your own skin again. And we want to invite you to join us for this experience this January.
Yeah. And also, for those of you who are just joining us, we've been in the emotional health field for 15 years now. We've had over 4,000 clients, and we've had over 10,000 people take our courses. And the cool thing is that in that whole process, we've actually had thousands of people tell us that taking our courses has radically transformed their lives, their relationships. And the reality is, it's not just because of the information, it's because of the community aspect. And that's what's so cool and unique about Reclaiming You. It's 14 weeks of live community experience that you're going to have when you join us for that. So we're excited about it. Come join us. You can go to justinabbey.com/reclaimingyou. And October 28th is when that'll be available on our website. And then January 11th, 2025 is when the course kicks off. And it's going to be a cool way to start the year off. So come join us.
Yeah, join a healing community where you get to connect to love now, not when you're fixed. Love now.
Love now.
Okay. So
honesty,
agreements, and honesty. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
Can I tell a story about honesty?
Yes.
Is now an okay
it's story
story time? Love story time. Okay. So Pietze and I, there's a term, microscopic truth, which we learned from a wonderful man named Terrence Real, I believe.
And it's just a term that basically encompasses honesty on a very, very microscopic level. So when I feel something, rather than pushing that away, like he says something and I kind of get my feelings hurt, but I'm like, I shouldn't have my feelings hurt. I don't want to create issues.
Try to not think about it.
I don't push that away. I actually am honest with myself that hurt my feelings.
When you're at a level 1,
when I'm at a level 1, 2, 3, not by the time that it gets to a level
not
10
2
and
weeks
it's a
later,
full-blown
and you've
issue.
been trying to push it down and trying to push it down and trying to push it down.
So,
and one of the ways that he describes it is the honesty that cannot be argued with, right? So it's lots of me, lots of I, not blaming,
not perception,
like personal body experience. When you said that, my body felt panic internally, and this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a story about that, and it's a difficult concept to learn because most of us in childhood are taught to conceal, don't feel, don't let it show. Adam Reynolds, I know you're out there. But it's the frozen treatment, right? Like we want to pretend. And even more so, I think in the church, that is really taught with emotions. Like emotions are really bad. And so we are all
don't
brainwashed
trust your heart.
The heart is evil or whatever that is. Okay, so it's a really hard concept to learn because we're so used to not giving the honest answer, but giving the answer that we think the other person wants.
Yeah.
Or we should.
Okay, so I woke up. This is a very common story for us. I woke up and I am dead to the world. But Pietze had been up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, not being able to sleep, and she had a migraine. And I knew this. So I wake up, it's a school morning, and I have to get the kids out the door to school. And that's a very overwhelming process for us. But internally, I'm like, I have to freaking do this. Because if I wake her up, what's going to happen typically is that her migraine will get worse. And then what happens then is that then she has to cancel work. We lose money. And
we have to make up
it's
that time.
this whole domino effect So even though internally it kind of feels like crossing over an internal boundary when I'm struggling to not ask for her help, it's like I'm kind of victim to it internally.
Totally.
Like, I
We
don't
all
want to
get
do
that.
this, but I have to do
Yep.
this.
Yep.
Okay. And so I force myself out of bed, and internally I'm feeling a lot of victim feelings, but I also know I'm doing the right thing. And I get the kids ready, and it's particularly hard. I don't remember the details, but they were being a pain.
Yeah.
I get them to school, I get home, and there's a break of about an hour between when I get home and when I have to work. So I sit down on the couch, and this whole time as I'm getting them in school, I'm thinking to myself, I really hope that I get home and Pietze's not awake so that I can have a little alone time to reset.
Before I have to work.
Literally, as my butt cheeks are touching the couch to sit down and drink my coffee, because our living room is directly above our master bath.
Yeah.
Okay. So as my butt is hitting the couch, I hear Pietze's footsteps walking to the toilet.
You're like,
And I'm
"She's
like,
up."
oh, crap.
And
Here we go.
For me, I wake up and realize that I slept in and didn't help get the kids out in the morning. So I immediately go to my subconscious pattern, which is that I feel shame. I let my body, I let him down. Then I feel trapped because I feel out of control and I'm feeling shame. So I internally in that shame start going into a fawn response before I even see Johnny. Like, oh, I'm going to make sure that he's okay. I'm going to try to connect with him, that sort of thing.
Well, and your response was very codependent in the sense of, I need you
to be okay.
So that I don't feel shame. Right?
Yeah, totally.
And internally for me, I am feeling, as I hear her, she goes to the bathroom, she starts walking down the stairs, and I'm feeling awful. Like, I had an awful morning. I don't feel great, and I don't want to connect with her.
Yeah.
That feels like asking too much for me, you know, but
Which is
I don't know how to
understandable.
communicate that in a way that doesn't sound like I'm being a dick.
Right.
I don't want to talk to you. Like, did you say that to your spouse? Like, you can't, I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't say that to
Totally.
Pietze.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm in this kind of like, I don't know how to be honest. This is a very common dynamic for us
Yes.
where we're going to miss a moment of microscopic truth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Pietze comes down the stairs and she says,
I'm like, hey, how did it go this morning? Are you doing okay? He's like, he's not looking at me, looking down at his phone.
I'm
It's fine.
It's fine.
It was fine. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to make some breakfast. Do you want me to make you some breakfast? I'd love to make you some I'm so sorry. And I start apologizing profusely. I'm so sorry I slept in. I really wish I could have been there for you. You
It's
know,
fine.
And he's like, it's fine. Do you want me to make you some breakfast?
Sure.
No. Or maybe he
Did it-
said, sure. And so
No eye contact. Okay.
Yeah.
And these are all things that you don't think about, but it's nervous system. We talked about in the last episode,
Mhm.
nervous system regulation. Eye contact is nervous system regulating.
So every
Vocal
time he
tone
doesn't
is-
look at me and he's responding, I think, oh, he's upset at me.
Totally.
He's pissed at me. What I was afraid of happening is now happening. I let him down. He's pissed at me. So I go to the kitchen, I turn off the coffee maker and
Turn on the coffee maker.
turn on the coffee maker, put what I thought was the pot in, only it was a cup. I turn around and I'm like, it's building. And the moment happens.
Well, and I said at this point, I'm trying to draw a boundary, but in my own like really messed up way. And so I'm like, I'm going to go downstairs because I work downstairs. That's where my Lego collection is.
Yeah.
And so rather than having a voice about what I'm honestly needing, I'm
and
just
what's going on with
vacating.
him. He's like, I'm going to go downstairs. And so I say, hey, I totally understand that you need to go downstairs. Before you go, I probably just need a little bit of connection time so that I don't feel like we're off before we start the day.
Which is my worst fear. Like,
Yeah.
okay, yet another person
Needs
who's
something
taking from me.
Mhm.
Yep. And so he's like, honestly, like somehow it snapped where
Mhm.
he snapped and was like, honestly, I don't have capacity for that. And then I start escalating, like, I just, like, you haven't even looked at me since I came down here. And I don't understand what is going on. And I feel so bad about what happened. And I feel like you're mad at me. And so it escalates.
Well, and I don't know if you see what's happening here, but we're 20 minutes into this slippery slope
Where
into
it
a
could
fight,
have
and
been
neither
so
one of
much-
us have been honest yet.
No.
Yeah.
And it's escalating
Yes.
now. It's snowballing out of control.
And we're still not being honest.
So we start going back and forth, and all of a sudden he's like, Pietze, you're brewing an entire pot of coffee all over the cabinets and the counter.
because she had we have a coffee maker that you can either do a full pot or just a single cup. And she had put a cup in and put the full pot button. So it's a fountain of coffee all over everywhere.
So now I'm even more, I turn around and I go, fuck. I yell that like so loud.
Pietze starts cussing and
I'm pissed
yelling
off
at me.
because now I was already escalated, right? And this is what happens when your nervous system is off. You make mistakes because you're not fully present. So it tends to snowball anyways.
And I doubled down and I'm like, I'm not getting off the freaking couch to help her.
No.
So I'm like,
I'm like, are you going to get up there and help? Are you going to stand up and are you just going to watch me do this?
Yeah.
Or are you going to help me? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to watch you. And I was like, oh, F no, it is on, gloves off, you know? So we're just escalating.
And now at this point,
we're
you
yelling
both
at each
are
other.
Probably spending your time thinking about what the other person is doing wrong.
Yes.
Oh, 100%.
Like, he doesn't even care about me.
No.
He doesn't even,
All of it is swirling.
I felt so bad. And I came down and he doesn't even care about me as a human. And you're probably feeling like she doesn't even care about me as a human. She just wants to take from me and consume the very little that I have.
And the second I step out of line, she's going to start yelling at me and blah, 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 blah. On
so
we go.
It escalates into a good full-fledged fight. And eventually we take a moment, we pause, we realize what we're doing, we calm down, we come back and we are actually honest with what was actually going on.
Totally.
And the minute we're honest with what was actually going on, we're able to understand that neither one of us was actually threatening, that what we thought was happening wasn't actually happening, and that both of us are perfectly safe to be feeling what we're feeling. And most of what we were feeling didn't even need to be felt because the threat was never there.
Yes.
But the thing with that story is
we missed a choice point.
We missed the choice point. We always tell couples that there's a choice point.
With microscopic truth, there's always a point where you make a decision, like that show we were watching, where it takes you down one path or a different path.
You either choose to be honest or you choose to double down and try to
perform
or push down what you're feeling. And so the choice point that I missed is the minute I woke up and I felt shame because I had slept
you could have actually just come down and said, I'm feeling a lot of shame.
Absolutely. I should have come downstairs and said, hey, I woke up and I'm feeling shame because I slept in and I know you're exhausted and you had to do the kids by yourself.
Are you okay?
Are you okay? I'm recognizing.
I'm worried that you're mad at me.
Yeah, I'm worried that you're upset. Are you actually upset? At that moment, Johnny could have been honest. I could have
come in and said, hey, I made this decision for practical reasons. I actually didn't want to wake you up. I know that was not the right thing to do. We need you to work. You're such a big contributing part of our family. I love you. I value you. The morning was really hard for me, but not because of you.
And I need alone time.
And I need alone time.
Yep. And I would have been like,
it's not because you've done anything wrong. It's just because I'm tired. And that's not your fault.
Yep. But instead, all we were doing was playing into each other and escalating each other rather than missing that moment of microscopic truth where we could have had honesty that would have vacated an entire fight. And there's value for each other to be human. So there's value for him to be overdone and need alone time. That's not personal towards me. It's understandable. He values that it probably is scary for me when I oversleep and I feel like I'm letting him down. And he comes in softly and says, hey, you're good. I love you. He leads with relief.
Well, and that's really what I'm remembering the fight now. It's been a little while, but I'm remembering the point at which it turned. I was actually the one who turned it around. Little pat on the back for that one.
He is way better at turning stuff around.
But you know what it was? We were fighting. We were yelling back and forth. And I had a moment where I realized what she was upset about. And what she was upset about was that she felt like I was upset that she had slept in. And in that moment, I recognized I'm not upset that she slept in. I feel tired and overdone. So I was able to come back in because we talk about learning your spouse, learning their nervous system, knowing how to calm their nervous system. It's such an important part of distress management within marriage, which is one of the main areas where people go wrong. I know her nervous system, and I know that one of her big triggers between us is the feeling of feeling falsely accused or feeling like blamed for something that wasn't her fault. And in that moment, I could tell she was feeling like she was being blamed for not getting out of bed. And I was able to just come in and completely diffuse that. Hey, I don't want you to feel like I'm upset that you slept in. I wanted you to sleep in. That was the right decision for us. What I'm feeling is that I'm just really tired and worn out.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's the recognition and the disarming of what was going on inside of her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I love this story so much because a lot of fights are caused by people not just being honest about their own thing at a small level.
yeah.
And
Yes.
this one thing has transformed. I mean, so many times. So your nervous system, you use your 5 senses to decide if something is safe or a threat. That
Mhm.
our nervous system is constantly on alert. We're scanning with our eyes, with our ears, with our smell, with our with the texture. So when me and Justin are interacting, if his tone changes or
Yeah.
if his eye contact changes or his facial expression changes, that can alert to me a threat. So in the past, I would just assume what was happening. I would assume what was going on for him. And I might respond with like, oh, you're getting frustrated or something. Like that is not a microscopic truth. That's not a microscopic truth is like going back to like what is going on inside of me. And
Yes.
so what is going on inside me is like, oh, hey, I can tell that I'm starting to have anxiety because I'm nervous that you're frustrated. I saw your face change and I actually don't know what that means, but I can tell I'm starting to have anxiety.
Yeah.
When I
Yes.
do that, it feels so unpersonal to Justin
Mhm.
that he's able to be like, oh, thanks so much for bringing that up before I'm now so angry. And that was the part of the case I built.
Yes.
Like what we often do is we gather evidence to build a huge case that's unwinnable then.
Yes.
Instead of what you're saying, microscopic truth is, we call it narrating, but the concept is, but I like saying microscopic because it's reminding people do
It's
that
the
when
little-
it's the small things.
As small as possible.
Yes.
Yep.
Because then, and again, it's not as small as possible. Like, I didn't like that tone you used. It's not
It's not
As
accusational.
small as possible when it comes to energy. Like when the
Yes.
energy is still small.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I'm saying as small as possible about me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
So again, I might say like, hey, when you were sharing that story and your tone got more passionate, I could feel the anxiety in my body go up because
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little on edge,
Yes.
Yeah.
you know, something like that. But it's not, I'm not using microscopic truth to lawyer someone.
Yes.
yeah. Or
into
create
behaving.
accusation. Like,
yes.
I think you're an idiot. There's my truth.
Yeah.
You
totally.
know, a lot of people when they start
Yeah.
this out, I'm like, okay, not quite.
That's
not
not
quite.
that's not
Yeah,
the truth
not
we're
quite.
talking about.
We're going deeper than that. What's actually happening inside of you that's causing you to believe that? You
And
know?
honestly, for me, learning about my nervous system and my body sensations and how they connect to emotions changed everything for me.
Yeah.
So when I started to be like, but I didn't know I felt anxiety before. I didn't even know that was an emotion I was feeling. So I had to learn that I felt anxiety. Then I had to learn what anxiety felt like in my body. Oh,
Mhm.
anxiety feels like my chest is pounding. Then, oh, I'm noticing that my chest is pounding in this conversation with Justin. And so then I can say in the middle of a conversation, oh, I'm noticing that my chest is pounding here. That my ability to start to notice my own nervous system, my own body sensations, and my own emotions connected to
Mhm.
those is what allows me to do microscopic truths.
Yeah. So, agreements. Are we good to move on to
Yeah.
agreements?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
why don't you share the last story was a story where we did it wrong.
Yeah.
This is a story about how we did it right around agreements.
Yeah. So really you need that honesty piece because there has to be, I have to authentically come with honesty. And then what happens when you're honest, but both of you need two different things or want two different things? Then what do? You know, so a lot of times when we talk about making and keeping agreements, sometimes literally it just comes down to negotiating. Okay, you want the house messy. I want the house clean. Let's negotiate this out until we have a good enough
A
win-win.
win-win. Like what
Yeah.
we did is I have my own closet that I can have as messy as I
It's
want.
like your Monica closet.
I did this with another couple. She wanted the house really clean. He needed a space where he felt free to be him.
Yeah.
So there was one room in the house that he was allowed to be as messy as he wanted, and he could
Yep.
just shut the door so she didn't have to see it.
Yep.
But that was a win-win.
It was an agreement that was good enough.
Mm-hmm.
It was good enough for both of them. And so we had a night, recently where I had been working all day and then came down after work and connected with Johnny for a few minutes. And then I was like, hey, are you good? I had a deadline for a project. And I was like, hey, are you good to hold down the fort tonight and go and watch the kids make dinner? Or are you good to hold down the fort tonight while I go keep working? And he said, wait a second. And I was like, you did that all last week and I held down the fort. So I was thinking you could do it tonight. And he's like, okay, well, wait a second. First of all, what does that mean, holding down the fort? And I was like, well, like making dinner, packing lunches, getting the kids in bed, cleaning the house, all the things I did.
And if we can rewind.
Well, I'm going to put that part in.
Oh, you're going to put that part in. Okay,
so
good
he
enough.
was like, okay, that makes sense that you would want that. I can understand that would feel fair. Here's what I'm struggling with. The last 4 nights that you've said, hey, you're going to get alone time, that we've agreed that I'd have alone time, I actually forgo that alone time to have a conversation with you because you needed it. I had not remembered that. In my mind, I was kind of angsty about it because I was like, you should be able to do all the stuff that I do when, because I'm seeing it from my point of view. That's my job, to see things from my point of view and bring it and be honest. And his job is to be honest back and say, hey, listen, that's great. I don't mind doing that. But I feel panic coming up in my body because every night that we've said that I could have alone time,
something has overridden
it. And I feel panic tonight that I'm not going to get that again. And I said, okay, well, that's valid. And then it kind of was a little angsty between us. And we kind of started getting into like whose needs are going to matter more here.
Which is common
thing.
Yep.
So then this is where I turned it, because sometimes I'm good. I took a deep breath and I said, okay, right now, neither one of us are feeling like our needs matter. And I think what we need to do is negotiate an agreement so that we both feel good about this, because I do feel worried about my deadline and you need alone time. And both of these things are really valid.
Yeah.
But also
what I love is both of these things are valid.
Yes.
Yeah. My need for alone time is valid and your business deadline is valid.
Yes.
Both are valid, because a lot of times we invalidate our own needs.
Yes.
Totally.
And then we resent our partner when we give up our needs to make sure that theirs are okay. Like if you would have been like, I guess because it's a business thing, I just need to give up me having alone time. You might have done that. But then you would have resented her for not having alone time.
He would have shown up relationally, which then would have felt like a punishment to me.
Yes.
So we literally just negotiated agreement. I was like, okay, how about if I go work, how would you feel about this? And I said, I laid out my thought and I said, you can veto. Like we'll keep working back and forth. So I said, how about I go work now and you do dinner and lunches. And then when the kids are ready for bed, I'll pause my work and put the kids in bed. And you can go downstairs at that point. And then once the kids are in bed, I can continue working and you can have alone time.
To which I responded, that's fine, but it needs to actually happen.
I need to know that this is going to happen.
I actually have a lot of fear around broken agreements around my alone time, because my alone time is the least practically helpful thing in our life. Right. Yeah. And so it's always kind of the first thing to go.
Yep. So I said, yep, that's valid. You're right. And I said, and I want you to know that I see that you sacrificed your alone time to show up for me the last 4 nights and how much that meant to me. And so I value what you need and it will happen tonight. We completely, in the past, had we not done that, it would have escalated into a full-blown fight of whose needs matter more, who's more important, who's the squeakier wheel here.
Yes.
Rather than we literally completely, it took us less than 5 minutes to do that.
Totally.
And we were done. You know?
And this is looking for win-wins and negotiate. And like part of this comes from the belief. When you actually believe there is an option where we both can get our needs met. Most of us as kids didn't experience that.
Yeah.
We didn't. It was mom gets her need met or I get my need met, or dad gets his need met, but mom doesn't. Like a lot of times we didn't see collaborative win-win approaches. So I know with me and Justin, you actually have to have the belief there is a way we could negotiate this where we can both win. There is a way where both of our needs can matter.
Yeah.
That belief has to be there first so that then you
Yes.
can seek to brainstorm together
Yes.
for what is a way that we can decide that both of our values matter.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that collaborative spirit can be applied as well, even to conflict inside of marriage, because most of the issues that you have in marriage, most of the issues that we have in marriage that you get really stuck on, that you can't work through, it's because you both have pain about the same thing, the same situation, right? And so a collaborative spirit, even in that, is accounting for them. You're always accounting for them and yourself. Hey, I'm upset about this thing. I also know that you have pain around this too, and that matters to me. Okay, that right away disarms them because they don't feel
because
like
you're considering them.
if you
Right.
come in and say, hey,
Right.
if I would come to Pietze about a common issue that we have and say, hey, I'm upset because I haven't had alone time all week, and that was it, that might be a little more difficult. But if I came in and said, hey, I know that I've been distant this week, and I know that you have a lot of pain with me distancing. At the same time, I actually feel like I'm needing alone time, but I don't want it to feel like I'm just pulling back even more. But I also can tell that it's getting worse for me, not better. See, that's a
Again,
more
this
collaborative
is-
conversation.
And to me, that is what I would describe as narrating, which is
Yes.
I'm now letting you in on what's going on inside of me.
Yeah.
But
so
I'm
we can make a
considering you at the
decision
same
together.
time.
But he considered my nervous
Mhm.
system at the same time. So immediately it puts my defenses down because I don't need to defend my standpoint. Okay, you brought your standpoint. No, I'm going to defend mine. Even in the honesty, even in the exchange, we're using collaboration so that the other person knows I'm considering you just as much as I'm considering myself.
Or if you
Because
think
we consider the relationship.
if you think about like a main issue that you might have in marriage, one thing that would be an interesting exercise to do, this is something I do inside of myself. When I'm getting ready to say something that I know could elicit a defensive response out of Pietze, I think about what her initial defensive response is going to be. And then I lead, this is a Stan Tatkin term as well, I lead with relief to that as I'm bringing my issue. One of Pietze's main things, and I said this earlier, is feeling falsely accused or feeling like she's being made to be the bad guy. So if I'm upset about her at something, oftentimes I will lead with this statement. Hey, I don't think you've done anything wrong here. And I don't
Or
think
I'm
that your
not
heart
sure.
was bad in this.
I don't think your heart was
But
bad.
when you said this, I felt such and such.
Yeah.
Right. It's leading with that relief because you're kind of taking the wind out of the sails of their defensiveness.
Right.
Because you're saying, I see this thing that you're going to come back
Totally.
and defend yourself with. And I actually, that's really valid to me.
Yeah.
You don't have to defend yourself because I'm considering you equally as much as I'm considering me because we're working together for this third thing, which is the plan.
Can I speak a microscopic truth right now?
Yes.
I have anxiety about our time here today because we have to get you guys to an airport not too long. I want to make sure that we cover the full topics here inside of this. There's one other arena, which is that we haven't met. I think it's one other, which is accepting fully who someone is inside of a situation.
I don't know that we can even do that in 3
Well, I think we can
minutes.
just touch it for a second because I think we've
Okay.
been saying it all along.
Yeah.
I think that a big part of this is, again, valuing that there's humanity. And within that, I accept that you're human.
Mhm.
I accept that there are things about you that I don't like.
Mhm.
The way that I don't like how messy Johnny is. I don't
Mhm.
like how much alone time he needs. I don't
Mhm.
like how much he can't be in a conversation. That's hard for me, but I accept that about him because that is part of who he is. Now what makes it safe to accept the other person is that it's held in balance with my needs and my nervous system.
Because
Mhm.
you know
And
that
with
you're
me accepting
collaborating
her.
over a relationship, the plant that we talked about before.
Yeah.
You're collaborating over a relationship. And you know that I can accept him knowing that he's also participating, wanting to help make this thing thrive.
Yeah.
That it's not going to become a one-sided thing that if I say, yep, I accept this about you, he'll
Yeah.
never show up and
Yep.
never want to meet your
Yep.
needs
Again,
whatsoever.
it comes back to that pH balance of that water. If it has to be 50% me too.
Mhm.
So me showing up, I'm going to be a lot opposite. I need the house clean. I like to talk. I want to connect.
And those are things
I
that I
want-
have to accept her as she is.
Mhm.
She's never going to be as easygoing emotionally as I would like.
Yep.
Very true.
And
I'm
I
going to be
accept
more
that.
maintenance. And I accept that about myself. I'm not trying to make myself more easygoing for him. I accept that I'm a more emotional person. And within that acceptance, I also know that I need to protect him with my emotions. And do you see that it keeps, because when we say accept each other fully, people are appalled at that because they're like, how can I accept this thing that they're doing that hurts me? I'm like, well, it's not black and white. You can't think of it black and white. It's that you accept that they are going to struggle and they're going to be human and they're not going to do this perfect, even if you have an agreement, because they're human and the brain is automatic,
Totally.
and responds quicker than time.
Yep.
It's so quick. But I also am keeping that intention with what I need because we need this plant to thrive. So left to his own devices, the plant doesn't thrive.
Yep.
Left to my own devices, the plant doesn't thrive. But there's an acceptance of each other's humanity within that and our needs within that.
So
Does
like
that make
for
sense?
you, Johnny,
good.
you're like, I have to accept that she needs more relationally than
Yes.
than I would want to give. That is who I've married and that's who I'm with. So
And
in
if I choose
order
to
for
stay in
our
this marriage-
relationship to thrive,
Yes.
it will cost me to be more
Yeah.
relational than what would be natural to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is why we talk so much about not perfection, but good enough. Like 70%. It's really
Yes.
critical to, if you're going to have a safe and secure marriage and good attachment and good bonding within marriage, you have to be able to be authentic. And being authentic requires you to be able to be human and to be imperfect, and for the other person to be human and to be imperfect. And if you're thinking about acceptance, even in the context of like grief, it being the last stage of grief, when you get to acceptance, it doesn't mean that the person didn't die.
Right.
Totally.
When you get to acceptance over who your partner is, it doesn't mean that who they are doesn't hurt you.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that you can't have a voice about the way that they hurt you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you can't ask them to change on your behalf, because once again, you're not just valuing their nervous system and you're not just valuing your nervous system. It has to be good enough for both of you.
Yeah.
Because whatever happens to you will come back to bite Justin in the ass. Whatever happens to him will come back to bite you in the ass, because
Right.
you're interdependent on each other. There's no way around that fact. You will affect each other. And so acceptance of who they are as a human, who they are as an imperfect being, and not removing love from that, not removing your heart from them, but asking them to change as well. It's good enough for both of you.
Yeah.
Which is great. And I can see the places where, even where you've accepted that, hey, she requires a different expression of emotional connection. At the
Yeah.
same time, as you've given more, she said, you know what? I accept that he needs to be alone at times. And this might not be fun in this moment for me, but I know for him, in order for him to thrive, I need to actually create that space for him.
And you do these,
And it's not personal.
you do these things for each other because it's good for you. Taking care of her is good for me because I require her to take care of me in the same, because it's an agreement.
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of you the way that I want you to take care of me. And so I will do things. I've built certain muscles. I give, some of my couples these hacks where it's like, I will word vomit intentionally when I'm communicating because she needs more words than I need. I will think, and it sounds like acting,
It helps.
but I will think through having a different tone of voice intentionally, not because I need it for me,
Yeah.
but because it is important to me that I have a good impact on her nervous system, because if she's doing well, then she has a good impact on me.
yours.
And we get into this
And I
cycle where
think
it
that
works.
That's exactly, and we need to wrap up, but that's exactly what we're talking about. One of the core fundamentals of relationship is that you each impact each other, and we get the power to choose to impact in positive ways, knowing that we will impact in negative ways.
Totally.
And
Yes.
and so we get to choose how much are we going to be aware and care for in each other, knowing that how I impact you will come back to me. It's like a constant knowing that, like, if I do A, B will happen. If I don't connect to Justin for a week, we will fight more.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can choose that, but it will cost me more at the
Yeah.
end of that scenario.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if he avoids the conflict's going to grow bigger. And once you accept those things, then you can be like, oh, if I can contribute, I can actually create a more fun relationship,
secure
for
relationship
me to be in.
that grows and
Yeah.
thrives to be life-giving.
And ultimately, these 2 podcast episodes have been addressing the idea of like, we can either let relationships happen to us or we can happen deliberately to them.
Yes.
And so often people haven't strategically sat down and thought out, what do I want this relationship to look like? This is an invitation to sit down and look at, okay, how do we want these dynamics to play out? What agreements do we want to come to?
Yes.
What are needs that we need to bring to the table? And this is, for a lot of people, like Johnny said early on, he wasn't showing up to the relationship. He wasn't communicating about needs. He didn't know things about his own needs in certain ways. Like when we come into this collaborative effort that's mutually agreed upon, this is where you thrive. This is where you end up setting this goal for your relationship. And then you get that thriving tree that produces fruit for everyone.
Yeah.
I think this has been a profound 2-episode series that we've been able to dialogue about this. I was taking so much out of it, even thinking like, what could I do differently? What are things that we need to talk about?
Our mission succeeded. I just told Pietze, could you tell Justin these things?
Yeah.
She's like,
That
"Oh
works
my
so
God,
well.
okay,
It's so
okay."
good. You guys fun.
I'm kidding.
I know you're kidding. But thank you for sharing your part of your journey. You're both very human and messy.
You can find them
That's very true.
Pietze on Instagram
Yep. Or at pietze.com.
or at pietze.com. You can
Contact
get information.
at pt.com.
That's
That's
the
my
email?
email.
Yeah.
But you can just go to pietze.com
If
Yeah.
you're like,
to find Johnny or I.
yep,
there.
if you need
That's
help
great.
and you want them to consult with you.
Hit the subscribe button on YouTube.
Yeah.
Hit the bell so you know when the next episode drops.
Ding.
We're having a lot of fun, and you can
And
come.
share these episodes. The more you share, we've had so many people's whole life change because one person shared an episode
Yep.
with them.
Yeah.
And
and
it
then
helps
it-
to foster community and culture
Mm-hmm.
that ends up like expanding, and you have relationships that are all on the same
Creates a
Yeah.
great
team.
ripple effect.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
does. All
Love
right,
it.
we gotta go
We
to
gotta
the
go.
airport.
We gotta go to the airport.
Bye.
Bye.